This is a very simple one, but it's important. The ers, the ums, the nos. Absolutely deadly. If you want just instant death on the speaking podium, get out there and start repeating every 10, 15, 20 seconds or because you know what the audience will be doing. A number of them for sure, because they're bored, right? They're an audience listening to a speaker. They will quickly find that the most interesting thing to do will be to count your ers and the ums. For grand total, did you know I started counting? Wasn't right at the beginning, but he started doing it. I counted 47 of them. Or someone else with a second hand on their watch will keep track of how much time was it between each or Deadly stuff. How do you break it? You break it this way, by recognizing that silence has power. And silence is something that you can use to really gain attention. So if you know that you have a habit of throwing in ers or ums, practice the speech, not even necessarily in front of someone, but practice the speech, giving it frequent pauses. That is, get into the habit of speaking for a little while and then having dead air. So that you get comfortable with the idea that when you're not sure of what to say, you're trying to recollect what comes next. Instead of going or you stop. And you have to keep practicing this so it becomes a habit. So that when you get to that awkward point, you're not sure of what to say, instead of an or an coming out of your mouth, there's silence. And that silence can make you a very powerful speaker. You have to remember that with your audience, you're constantly fighting distraction. You're talking to a group of people, and you know what a whole bunch of them are doing? They're thinking about their shopping list, what restaurant they're going to go after the talk, all kinds of things. They're drifting in and out of attention. One of the things that a pause does is it calls people's attention back to the speaker. Because when you've lost attention to the speaker, what the speaker becomes is this droning voice. And when suddenly there's silence, instinctively an audience member does this. What's going on? And you've got them again. Public speaking over and over again, and your speech, by the way, needs to be broken up into passages with clever little lines that call people back to attention. You have to assume, well, by this point, people are not paying attention. I'm changing the topic, and so I have a pause. I have some statement which is intended just to get them paying attention once again. Pauses are also excellent for emphasizing. Because when you pause, people stop. And the words that come next, they actually will be paying attention to, and they will hear. Two techniques that you see speakers using for engaging their audience. One is humor, and the other is questions. Be careful about both of these. Both of these can work. Both of these can work against you. Humor. Be really careful about telling jokes. Because if you're at all nervous, or people sense in any way that you're having trouble commanding their attention, as you begin to tell a joke, that is, a funny story that has a setup and a punchline, what they see is a man or woman heading out on a tightrope. And they're just fascinated to see whether you're going to fall to the ground or not. It's not a good way to get an audience's attention, because they're no longer enjoying their talk, they're just looking at whether you're going to fail or not. And you really don't want to have that dynamic going on. Getting people to laugh, getting the people to chuckle is an excellent idea. That means people are relaxed, their whatever little bits of hostility or towards you they might have as a speaker disappear because you can't feel angry and laugh at the same time. Little bits of light humor, including stuff at your own expense, goes over very well. Establishes your humility, gets them to relax. An excellent idea. But keep it really brief. The other trick that you see speakers using is the asking of questions. I think they get this from school teachers. And the notion is that the way to engage your audience is to ask a question. Well, one way to really annoy your audience is to ask the wrong question. If you're going to do the ask the questions and see whether we can get people involved by shouting out answers, make sure that you're not asking questions which are either intrusive or too obvious. We all know the public speakers who says, "No, surely, you all know the answer to this question." Yet they all know the answer to the question. The reason they're not throwing out answers to your question is A, the answer is obvious and they're insulted by the fact that you've asked this, and B, you haven't won them over yet. You haven't won them over. You're using the question to win them over. And they're not going to participate in your "let me give you an answer to your question" technique because you haven't won them over. You've tried that question technique far too early. Also avoid questions that are, frankly, in any way intrusive. And there are lots of people who are sensitive about all kinds of things, about their status, their habits, and all the rest. Questions like, how many of you have, annoying brothers-in-law? Well, there's certain questions that people are almost anxious to answer, in which they don't feel they've in any way brought themselves into focus or standing out, but it's a fun-hearted response. And that's quite a legitimate way to do it. I do believe in the power of the story. This is something speakers commonly use, and they use it for a reason. Everybody loves a little story. You get to use your imagination, you get to escape whatever room you're in, and the speaker takes you to another world. Storytelling, even if you don't think that you're good at it, is just a great way to enhance the speech. And it almost is a surefire way to help win people over. Now this is exciting. This is important. This is something you'll want to remember. I'm talking about the rule of 3. Speech making is about rhythm. It's more like creating poetry or a song than anything else. And rhythm is important. And the rule of 3 is an ancient rule which is very real and very powerful. If you're giving a list of any kind, 2 is too few and 4 is too many. 2 always suggests kind of an opposition. So there are 2 things wrong with that kind of speech. There's A and there's B, and you think, well, is A more important than B? Does A lead to B? Is B different? How is B different from A? And if you give 4 things, it's like a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4. It's like a long list and nobody's going to remember any of it. 3 is where life becomes interactive, interesting, rhythmic. The rule of 3. Whenever you're going to, if you want to repeat a phrase, don't repeat it twice, don't repeat it. Don't do it, say it 4 times, 3 times. 3 is a magic number. It really does work. It's engaging and it's just perfect. And if you listen to experienced speakers, even without realizing it, consciously, they use the rule of 3, and I encourage you to as well. I tell you all these things in the hope that you might be able to use some of them towards being a good speaker. First and foremost, I'll tell you what I tell everyone that I've ever coached in public speaking, and that is, have a good time. You actually can. Even though you're fearful about it, you can actually have a good time. One of the things to do beforehand is, if you possibly can get to where you're going to be giving your speech. Ideally, you'll actually have a podium. Put your hand on that podium. Put your hand on the mic if you can. And feel it. Hopefully it's a nice solid podium. And tell yourself that this is where you belong. That this is your moment. That in a world in which you're constantly listening to other people, now people have to listen to you. And that's a nice feeling. That actually feels good. You can be as nervous as now in giving a public speech and end up feeling really good. As I said at the beginning, don't drive that nervousness down. Embrace it. And remember, you can be nervous and be an excellent speaker. You can be nervous and really enjoy yourself. And you can enjoy yourself. It's actually a wonderful feeling to be in front of a group of people speaking, realizing that you're giving them certain ideas, certain insights. Focus on that. It is really a wonderful, enjoyable thing to do, however nervous you might be. So good luck with that, and break a leg.